The research vessel's scientific glory drifted silently through the void, its sleek hull reflecting the distant light of 3 suns. Captain Zexhai adjusted her breathing apparatus nervously as she stared at the tactical display. The crimson dots representing Vortak battlecruisers had multiplied again during her brief rest cycle. "Status report," she commanded, her forearms working frantically across the control panels. Lieutenant Mortan, his scaled hide glistening with stress pheromones, looked up from his station. 43 Vortak ships now surround us, Captain. They've formed a complete sphere. No gaps in their formation. The bridge fell silent except for the gentle hum of life support systems. The scientific glory housed 215 beings from 7 different species, all part of the Galactic Scientific Collective's most ambitious research mission. They had been studying the unusual quantum fluctuations in this remote system when the Vortak had arrived without warning. Dr. Kalani, the mission's lead xenobiologist, approached the captain's chair. Her translucent skin flickered with patterns of worry. "Captain, we cannot hold much longer. Our shields are down to 18%. The Vortak are simply waiting for us to surrender or die." Zexhai had commanded research vessels for over 30 cycles, but this situation far exceeded anything in her training. The Vortak were notorious throughout the galaxy as ruthless raiders who showed no mercy to civilians. They captured valuable beings for slave markets and destroyed everything else. "Have we received any response to our distress signals?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. Communications Officer Thran shook his head sadly. "Nothing from Galactic Defense Command. Our nearest patrol vessel is 6 days away, assuming they even received our transmission. The Vortak jamming makes long-range communication nearly impossible." The captain's secondary hearts began beating faster. 6 days might as well be 6 centuries. The Vortak would board them within hours once their shields failed completely. She had studied the reports from other ships that had encountered these raiders. The survivors' accounts were horrifying. A proximity alarm suddenly blared throughout the bridge. Every crew member tensed, expecting the final assault to begin. Instead, Lieutenant Morton looked confused as he studied his sensors. "Captain, something strange is happening. The Vortak ships are moving into attack formation, but they're not targeting us. They're facing outward, away from our vessel." "Explain," Zexhai demanded. "Unknown contacts approaching from multiple vectors. The computer cannot identify the ship designs. They're moving incredibly fast, faster than anything in our databases." Dr. Kalani moved to the main viewer and enhanced the image. What she saw made no sense. The approaching vessels were much smaller than the massive Vortak cruisers, but they moved with purpose and precision that spoke of advanced technology. "How many ships?" the captain asked. "I count 12 contacts." "Wait, more are arriving." 24 now. 36. Morton paused, his eyes widening. "Captain, these ships are not matching any known configuration. Their energy signatures are completely foreign." The mysterious vessels arranged themselves in perfect formations around the Vortak fleet. Their movements were so coordinated that they seemed to operate as extensions of a single mind. Each ship was roughly triangular, with smooth lines that suggested they were built for both speed and combat effectiveness. Suddenly, the communications array crackled to life. A voice spoke in Galactic Standard, but with an accent none of the crew had ever heard before. "Research Vessel Scientific Glory, this is Captain Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Fleet. We received your distress signal. Maintain your current position and prepare for immediate extraction." The bridge crew exchanged bewildered glances. "Terran?" Dr. Kalani whispered. "I have never heard of this species." Captain Zexhai activated the response channel. "Unknown vessel, we are grateful for any assistance, but you are heavily outnumbered. The Vortak have over 40 battlecruisers surrounding us." The human voice responded with what sounded almost like amusement. "Copy that, Scientific Glory. We've noticed. Don't worry about the numbers. We specialize in impossible odds." What happened next would be recorded in galactic defense databases as the most one-sided battle in recorded history. The Terran ships moved like living creatures, each one dancing between Vortak weapon fire with impossible agility. Their weapons were unlike anything the research crew had ever seen. Instead of the usual energy beams or plasma torpedoes, the human ships fired projectiles that moved at incredible speeds. The Vortak cruisers, designed to withstand energy weapons, found their heavy armor completely useless against these kinetic attacks.
How are they moving like that? Mortan asked in amazement. Those acceleration patterns should crush any living being inside those ships. Dr. Kalani was recording everything her instruments could capture. The G-forces those pilots are experiencing should be lethal.
No known species can survive such extreme maneuvers. The first Vortak cruiser exploded in a brilliant flash as multiple Terran projectiles struck critical systems simultaneously. The raiders had never faced an enemy that combined such speed with such devastating firepower.
Captain Zexhai watched in stunned silence as the humans systematically dismantled the Vortak formation.
Their tactics were unlike anything taught in military academies. Instead of trading blows in traditional combat, they struck like a swarm of predators, coordinating their attacks with deadly precision.
Captain Chen, she transmitted, your pilots are incredible. How do they survive such extreme maneuvers? We're a bit tougher than most species expect, came the reply. Our homeworld taught us to handle high-gravity environments.
What kills other beings just makes us a little dizzy.
A second Vortak cruiser disappeared in expanding wreckage. Then, a third.
The remaining raiders began attempting to flee, but the human ships were faster than anything they had ever encountered.
None of them will escape, Dr. Kalani observed. The Terrans are hunting them down systematically.
The battle, if it could even be called that, was over within 20 minutes. 43 Vortak battlecruisers had been reduced to expanding clouds of debris.
Not a single human ship showed any signs of damage.
Captain Chen's voice returned to their communications.
*Scientific Glory*, this is Escort Leader. All threats have been neutralized. Prepare to receive our boarding party for damage assessment and medical assistance.
Captain Zexhai stared at the tactical display where the Vortak fleet had been.
Boarding party?
Captain Chen, we are honored by your rescue, but our situation was hopeless until you arrived. We have nothing to offer in return for such assistance.
No payment necessary, the human replied. We received your distress call and responded.
That's what civilized beings do for each other.
The concept was so foreign that several bridge crew members looked confused.
In their experience, military assistance always came with a price. Resources, territory, technology, or political favors were the usual currency for rescue operations.
A small Terran shuttle approached the research vessel's docking bay.
As it connected, Captain Zexhai prepared to meet these mysterious rescuers who had appeared from nowhere to save them from certain death. The airlock cycled, and the first human stepped aboard the Scientific Glory. The crew's initial reaction was shock at how similar these beings appeared to several known species, yet somehow different in ways they could not immediately identify. Captain Sarah Chen was tall and moved with fluid confidence that spoke of perfect physical conditioning. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical style, and her uniform was clearly designed for combat situations. What struck the alien crew most was her eyes. They held an intensity that seemed to see everything at once. Captain Zexhai, she said, extending her hand in what the research crew would later learn was a human greeting.
I'm glad we arrived in time. Is your crew intact? Yes, thanks to your intervention. But, I must ask, what is a Terran? We have never encountered your species in any galactic database.
Captain Chen smiled, and Dr. Kalani noticed that humans showed emotion through facial expressions in ways similar to several other species.
We're relatively new to this part of the galaxy. Earth is quite far from here, and we've only recently developed faster-than-light travel capabilities.
The revelation stunned the research crew.
A species with interstellar technology that was unknown to the Galactic Collective was unprecedented.
Every spacefaring civilization had been catalogued for thousands of cycles.
How did you receive our distress signal from such a distance? Lieutenant Mortan asked.
We have monitoring stations throughout this region. When someone calls for help, we respond if we're able. It's one of our core principles.
Dr. Kalani stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overcoming her amazement. Captain Chen, if you don't mind me asking, what type of world do your people come from? Your physical capabilities during that battle were extraordinary. The human captain's expression grew thoughtful. Earth is what you might call a high-gravity world with an oxygen-rich atmosphere. It's also quite geologically active, with extreme weather patterns and an unusually diverse ecosystem. A death world, Captain Zexhai breathed.
She had heard theories about such planets, worlds so hostile that they would kill most known life forms, but which might theoretically produce incredibly resilient species. We prefer the term challenging environment, Captain Chen replied with another smile. It keeps us on our toes. The human rescue team began conducting medical scans of the research crew, checking for injuries from the prolonged stress of the siege. Their medical equipment was advanced but appeared to operate on principles unfamiliar to galactic standard technology. Your people fight like nothing we have ever seen, ZXHY admitted. Those acceleration patterns, the coordination, the weapons technology, it's beyond anything in our military manuals. We've had plenty of practice dealing with difficult situations, Captain Chen explained. Earth taught us that survival often requires thinking creatively and moving fast. As the humans worked, Dr. Kalani observed their behavior carefully. They moved with an efficiency that suggested extensive training, but also with a casual friendliness that seemed genuine. These were clearly warriors of exceptional skill, yet they showed no arrogance or demand for recognition. Captain Chen, she said, your species has capabilities that would be invaluable to the Galactic Defense Forces. Have you considered joining the collective? The human paused in her equipment checks. We're still evaluating our options. Making contact with galactic civilization is a significant step for our people. We want to make sure we understand the political landscape before making any commitments. Captain ZXHY understood the wisdom in such caution. The galaxy was full of species that had joined the collective too quickly and found themselves overwhelmed by the complexity of interspecies politics. Your rescue of our vessel will certainly be reported to the appropriate authorities, she assured the human captain. Such actions create favorable impressions. We hope so. But, honestly, we would have responded regardless of political considerations. People were in danger, and we had the ability to help. The simple statement revealed something profound about human culture that would have far-reaching implications for galactic civilization. These beings from a death world operated according to principles that put moral obligation above personal gain. As the human medical team finished their work, Captain Chen prepared to depart. Your ship's systems are all functioning normally. We've provided you with communication equipment that can punch through most jamming arrays, in case you encounter similar situations. How can we contact your people in the future? Captain ZXHY asked. Captain Chen handed her a small device. This contains the frequencies for our emergency services network. If you need assistance and we're in range, someone will respond. The implications of that statement were staggering. The humans had established an emergency response network in unexplored regions of space, staffed by beings willing to risk their lives for strangers they had never met. As the human shuttle departed, the crew of the Scientific Glory found themselves fundamentally changed by the encounter. They had witnessed capabilities that exceeded their understanding of what was possible, displayed by beings whose motives seemed incomprehensible by normal galactic standards. Dr. Kalani, Captain ZXHY said, I want a full report on everything we observed about these humans. If they truly come from a death world, their emergence into galactic civilization will change everything. The xenobiologist nodded, her mind racing with the implications. Captain, if my preliminary observations are correct, we may have just encountered the most dangerous species in the galaxy, dangerous not because they are hostile, but because they are incredibly capable and genuinely benevolent. As the Scientific Glory resumed its journey toward friendly space, its crew carried with them the knowledge that somewhere in the galaxy, beings from a death world were patrolling the darkness, ready to answer distress calls from strangers who needed help. The galaxy was about to learn what it meant when humans decided that someone needed rescuing. Admiral Kethros examined the datapad for the third time, his chitinous fingers clicking nervously against its surface. The report from the research vessel Scientific Glory had arrived at Galactic Defense Command 6 days ago, and its contents had created chaos throughout the upper levels of military leadership. 43 Vortak battlecruisers destroyed in 20 minutes, he muttered to his aide, Commander Velix. By 12 unknown vessels using projectile weapons. No damage to the attacking force. Sir, the sensor logs have been verified by 3 independent analysis teams. The data appears accurate, however, impossible it seems. The Admiral's office overlooked the sprawling complex of Galactic Defense Headquarters on Nexus Prime. From his position, he could see the massive shipyards where the most advanced military vessels in the galaxy were constructed. Each ship represented decades of collaborative engineering between dozens of species. These Terrans, Admiral Kethros said, have they made any official contact with the collective?
No, sir. However, we have received 14 additional reports of similar encounters across the Outer Rim territories. The pattern is consistent: distress calls answered by human vessels, hostile forces eliminated with minimal casualties to the rescued parties. The Admiral stood and moved to his strategic display. The galactic map showed known space in brilliant detail, with trade routes, military installations, and territorial boundaries clearly marked. But, beyond the established borders lay vast regions where anything might exist. Show me the locations of these encounters. Commander Velix manipulated the controls, and red indicators appeared on the map. The pattern was disturbing. The human interventions formed a rough arc along the galaxy's edge, suggesting these beings had established a presence across an enormous area. Sir, analysis suggests they have monitoring capabilities and response fleets positioned throughout regions we considered uninhabited. That's impossible. Our deep space surveys would have detected any significant civilization in those areas. Yes, sir. That's what makes this so concerning. The door to the Admiral's office chimed, and his secretary announced the arrival of Dr. Yanish, the collective's leading expert on unknown species integration. The elderly Zaliran entered with his characteristic measured pace, his large eyes reflecting decades of experience in first contact situations. Admiral, I've reviewed the preliminary reports. If accurate, we're dealing with a species that represents either our greatest opportunity or our most serious threat. Admiral Kethros gestured to a chair. Explain. Dr. Yanish settled his frail frame carefully before speaking. The described capabilities suggest a species evolved under extreme selective pressure. The G-forces their pilots endured during combat would kill most known beings instantly. Their technology appears optimized for kinetic warfare, which is unusual for spacefaring civilizations. Why unusual? Most species develop energy-based weapons because space combat typically occurs at ranges where projectile weapons are ineffective. But, if these humans can maneuver their ships with such precision, they can engage at closer ranges where kinetic weapons become devastatingly effective. Commander Velix pulled up tactical analyses on the wall display. Our weapons experts have attempted to model their attack patterns. The coordination required exceeds our understanding of possible pilot reaction times. Dr. Yanish nodded thoughtfully. Which suggests either enhanced reflexes, superior communication technology, or both. The reported behavior patterns are equally intriguing. How so? Every encounter follows the same sequence: they respond to distress calls, eliminate threats, provide assistance, and depart without requesting payment or political concessions. This altruistic behavior is unprecedented among military-capable species. Admiral Kethros had been thinking about this exact issue. In his experience, species with significant military power used it to advance their own interests. The concept of a powerful civilization that helped others without expecting anything in return challenged everything he understood about galactic politics. Could it be a deception? Some kind of long-term strategy to gain trust before revealing hostile intentions? Possible, Dr. Yanish admitted, but inefficient. If they possessed the capabilities described in these reports, they could simply take whatever they wanted through direct force. A communication alert interrupted their discussion. The Admiral's secretary appeared on the display with obvious excitement. Sir, we're receiving a transmission from an unknown source. They identify themselves as the Terran Diplomatic Corps and request permission to approach Nexus Prime for formal first contact procedures. The three officers exchanged glances. After days of speculation, the humans were making direct contact with Galactic Defense Command. Put them through, Admiral Kethros ordered. The display shifted to show a human female wearing what appeared to be a formal uniform. Her bearing suggested military training, but her expression was open and diplomatic. I am Ambassador Maria Santos of the Terran Federation. We understand that recent encounters between our forces and various situations throughout this region have raised questions about our intentions and capabilities. Admiral Kethros stepped forward. I am Admiral Kethros, commanding Galactic Defense Operations. We have indeed received reports of your military interventions. We prefer to call them humanitarian responses, Admiral. We've been monitoring distress signals throughout this region and responding when circumstances permit. For what purpose? What does your Federation gain from these activities? Ambassador Santos paused, as if considering how to explain something that should be obvious. We gain the satisfaction of helping beings in need, Admiral. Is that not reason enough? Dr. Yanish moved closer to the display. Ambassador Santos, I am Dr. Yanish, specialist in interspecies relations. Your people's behavior patterns are unique among spacefaring civilizations. Could you help us understand your cultural motivations? Certainly, Doctor. Humans evolved on a world that required cooperation for survival. Our moral frameworks emphasize mutual aid and protection of those unable to protect themselves. When we developed space travel, we naturally extended these principles to our interactions with other species. Commander Velix spoke up. Our analysis suggests your people come from an extremely hostile environment. How did such conditions produce a cooperative society? Actually, the hostile environment required cooperation. Individual humans cannot survive alone on Earth. We learned early that our strength comes from working together and helping each other overcome challenges. Admiral Kethros found this explanation fascinating but incomplete. Ambassador, our reports indicate your military capabilities far exceed anything in our databases. How does a cooperative species develop such devastating weapons technology? The same environmental pressures that taught us to cooperate also taught us to defend ourselves effectively. Earth has many dangerous predators and natural hazards. We developed advanced technology to protect our communities. The implications were staggering. Most military technology development was driven by conflict between different groups within a species. The humans seem to have developed their capabilities fighting their environment itself. We would like to propose formal diplomatic relations between the Terran Federation and the Galactic Collective, Ambassador Santos continued. We believe our civilizations could benefit from cultural and technological exchange. Dr. Yanish leaned forward eagerly. What would such an exchange involve? We offer our assistance with security challenges throughout the Outer Rim territories. In return, we seek access to galactic trade networks and scientific databases. Admiral Kethros considered the proposal carefully. The Outer Rim territories had been plagued by raiders and pirates for decades. Traditional patrol fleets were too slow to respond effectively to distress calls in such vast regions. Ambassador, you mentioned monitoring distress signals. How extensive is your surveillance network? Our automated monitoring stations cover approximately 40% of the Outer Rim territories, with plans to expand coverage as resources permit. The Admiral's jaw dropped. 40% coverage of the Outer Rim represented a monitoring network larger than anything the Galactic Defense Forces had ever attempted to establish. How many ships does your fleet possess? Commander Velix asked. The exact number is classified, but we maintain sufficient forces to respond to multiple simultaneous emergencies across our area of operations. Dr. Yanish made rapid calculations on his datapad. Based on the reported response times and engagement patterns, you would need hundreds of vessels positioned throughout the region. We have found that rapid response capability requires significant resource investment, the ambassador replied diplomatically. Admiral Kethros realized they were dealing with a military force of unknown but clearly substantial size, operated by a species whose motivations remain mysterious despite their apparent openness. Ambassador Santos, would your government be willing to participate in formal military cooperation exercises? We would like to better understand your tactical capabilities. Certainly, Admiral. We believe joint training exercises would benefit both our forces. However, I should mention that our combat doctrines may differ significantly from current galactic defense standards. In what way? We tend to prioritize speed and overwhelming force application over traditional engagement protocols. Our goal is to end conflicts as quickly as possible to minimize casualties among non-combatants. Commander Velix pulled up standard military protocols on his display. Our procedures emphasize graduated response and diplomatic resolution before kinetic engagement. Admirable principles, Ambassador Santos replied, but less effective when dealing with raiders who attack civilian vessels. In those situations, rapid decisive action saves lives. The logic was undeniable, but it represented a fundamental shift from established military thinking. The humans seemed to operate according to principles that prioritized results over procedures. We would be honored to host a formal diplomatic mission, Admiral Kethros said finally. When could your representatives arrive at Nexus Prime? Our diplomatic vessel is already en route and will arrive within 6 standard hours. We hope this demonstrates our commitment to peaceful relations.
The transmission ended, leaving the three officers staring at a blank display. Each was processing the implications of what they had just heard. "Sir," Commander Velik said quietly, "if they already have a ship en route, they were confident we would accept their proposal." Dr. Yanish nodded slowly. "Or they were prepared for either acceptance or rejection. The speed of their response suggests careful advance planning." Admiral Kethros moved back to the strategic display. The red indicators marking human intervention seemed different now, not random acts of assistance, but evidence of a comprehensive strategy to establish influence throughout the Outer Rim. "Doctor, what's your assessment of their intentions?" "Based on observed behavior patterns, they appear genuinely committed to humanitarian principles. However, the scale of their operations suggests capabilities and resources far beyond what they've admitted." Threat assessment? Unknown. They clearly possess the ability to threaten galactic security if they chose to do so. But their actions consistently indicate peaceful intentions. Admiral Kethros stared at the galactic map for several minutes, considering the ramifications of humanity's emergence. Whatever happened next would fundamentally alter the balance of power in known space. "Commander Velix, I want full security protocols for the diplomatic reception." "Dr. Yanish, prepare comprehensive cultural briefings for the Integration Committee." As the two officers departed to carry out their orders, Admiral Kethros remained alone with his thoughts. In 6 hours, he would meet representatives of a species that might represent the future of galactic civilization, or its greatest challenge. The galaxy was about to discover what it meant to encounter humans who had decided they wanted to be good neighbors. The diplomatic reception hall on Nexus Prime had never hosted such an unusual gathering. Representatives from 14 different species filled the tiered seating, each delegation eager to observe humanity's formal introduction to galactic civilization. Ambassador Maria Santos stood at the central podium, her calm demeanor contrasting sharply with the nervous energy radiating from the assembled crowd. "Honored representatives," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's translation systems, "the Terran Federation comes before you today seeking partnership and friendship with the peoples of the galaxy." Delegate Thessarian of the Vexani Collective raised a crystalline appendage. "Ambassador Santos, our preliminary reports suggest your species possesses military capabilities that exceed established galactic standards. How do we know your intentions are peaceful?" Ambassador Santos touched a control on the podium, and a holographic display materialized above the assembly. "In the past 30 standard days, Terran forces have responded to 47 distress calls throughout the Outer Rim territories. Let me show you the results." The display shifted to show rescue statistics that made several delegates gasp audibly. 2,300 lives saved. 16 different species assisted. 0 demands for compensation or territorial concessions. "Our actions speak for themselves," Ambassador Santos continued. "We judge civilizations by their willingness to help those in need, not by their capacity to exploit others." Senator Colrath, representing the powerful hegemony worlds, leaned forward in his seat. "These rescue operations required significant resources and military assets. What does humanity gain from such expenditures?" "We gain allies, Senator. We gain knowledge. Most importantly, we gain the satisfaction of living according to our principles." The concept seemed to puzzle many of the delegates. Dr. Yanish, serving as the collective's cultural liaison, stepped to a secondary podium. "Ambassador, could you elaborate on these principles?" "Most spacefaring civilizations develop ethical frameworks that prioritize their own species' survival and prosperity. Humans learned early that survival requires cooperation. Our homeworld taught us that individuals and groups who help each other are more likely to overcome challenges than those who pursue purely selfish goals." Delegate Morthak of the Inner Worlds Alliance activated his communication system. "You claim to come from a dangerous world. Could you provide more specific information about these environmental pressures?" Ambassador Santos gestured, and the holographic display shifted to show images of Earth. The assembled delegates fell silent as they observed scenes of devastating natural disasters, massive predatory animals, and extreme weather phenomena. Earth experiences regular seismic activity, violent storms, temperature extremes ranging from -40 to +50 degrees Celsius, and an atmosphere that would be toxic to many species. Our ancestors survived by developing technology and social structures that could handle constant threats. The silence stretched for several moments as the implications sank in. Many of the represented species came from stable, gentle worlds where the primary survival challenges involved competition with other sapient beings.
How did such conditions produce a spacefaring civilization? Asked Dr. Yanish. Necessity drove innovation.
We developed advanced materials science to build structures that could withstand earthquakes and hurricanes.
We created medical technology to treat injuries from dangerous wildlife.
We learned to coordinate large-scale responses to natural disasters.
Admiral Kethros, observing from the military section, realized he was seeing the explanation for humanity's unprecedented capabilities.
Their technology had been forged by environmental pressures that would have destroyed most other civilizations.
Commander Zelik of the Trade Federation raised a concern that had been troubling many delegates.
Ambassador Santos, your people's military effectiveness raises questions about galactic balance.
How do we know you won't use these capabilities for territorial expansion? Because expansion is not our goal, Commander.
We want to explore, learn, and help others. Territorial conquest requires resources that could be better used for research, rescue operations, and infrastructure development. The answer revealed something profound about human thinking that most delegates found difficult to comprehend. For them, military power existed primarily to acquire and defend territory.
The concept of using such capabilities purely for humanitarian purposes was alien.
Senator Velthus of the Commerce Guild posed a practical question.
What do you propose regarding trade relationships? Your technology appears advanced. What goods or services do you need from galactic markets?
We're particularly interested in artistic and cultural products. Human society values creativity and innovation, and exposure to different perspectives helps us develop new ideas.
We also seek access to historical databases and scientific research. What do you offer in return? Ambassador Santos smiled.
Security services, advanced materials, medical technology, and engineering expertise.
We found that planets with stable security environments develop more prosperous economies. The implications were staggering.
The humans were offering to provide security for trade routes and colonies throughout the Outer Rim territories, regions that had been plagued by pirates and raiders for decades. Delegate Korthax, whose people had lost 3 colonies to raiders in the past year, spoke urgently.
Ambassador, could you provide specific examples of this security assistance? Certainly. We've established patrol routes covering major shipping lanes in sectors 7 through 15. Our response time to distress calls in these areas averages 12 standard hours. We've also developed early warning systems that can detect raider formations before they reach populated areas. Admiral Kethros was taking detailed notes.
12-hour response times across such vast distances required a logistics network beyond anything the Galactic Defense Forces had ever achieved.
Dr. Yanish asked the question that was troubling many observers. Ambassador, the scale of operations you're describing requires enormous resources. How large is your actual military force? Large enough to meet our commitments, Doctor.
We don't publicize specific numbers for security reasons, but we maintain sufficient assets to honor our obligations to friendly civilizations. The diplomatic answer revealed nothing while confirming that humanity possessed substantial military resources. Several delegates exchanged worried glances.
Could you provide information about your government structure? Asked Senator Kulroth. How are decisions made regarding military interventions?
The Terran Federation operates as a democratic republic with civilian oversight of military operations. Our constitution requires congressional approval for major military commitments, but humanitarian rescue operations can be authorized by field commanders.
This explanation added another layer of complexity.
The humans had apparently developed political systems that could authorize rapid military responses while maintaining democratic control over their armed forces.
Ambassador Santos seemed to sense the delegates' confusion.
I understand our approach may seem unusual. Most of you developed space travel to escape resource limitations on your home worlds. We developed it to explore and help others because our world taught us that cooperation leads to survival. Delegate Thessarian posed a question that cut to the heart of many concerns.
Ambassador, your people's capabilities could fundamentally alter galactic power structures. How do we know you won't decide to impose your will on other civilizations?
Because imposing our will on others violates our core principles.
Humans believe that forced cooperation is not true cooperation at all.
We want allies who choose to work with us because they believe in our shared goals. The concept of voluntary alliance based on shared principles rather than military or economic pressure was so foreign that several delegates requested clarification through their translation systems. Admiral Kethros decided to address military concerns directly. Ambassador, would your forces be willing to coordinate with existing galactic defense units? Absolutely, Admiral. We believe joint operations would benefit everyone involved. Our forces could handle rapid response situations while your ships maintain traditional patrol duties. What about command structure? How would tactical decisions be made during joint operations? We propose mission-specific command arrangements based on expertise and resources. If we're conducting a rescue operation, human commanders would lead. If you're managing a diplomatic situation, your officers would have authority. The flexible approach to command structure impressed Admiral Kethros while simultaneously raising new questions about human military doctrine. Most species insisted on rigid command hierarchies. Senator Velthus returned to economic concerns. Ambassador, what about resource allocation? Your rescue operations require significant energy and material expenditures. We view these expenditures as investments in galactic stability. Stable regions develop stronger economies, which benefit everyone through increased trade and innovation. Dr. Yanish was rapidly analyzing the cultural implications of human responses. Ambassador, your people seem to operate according to long-term strategic thinking that prioritizes community benefit over short-term individual gain. That's accurate, Doctor. Earth taught us that short-term thinking leads to extinction. Species that can't plan for future challenges don't survive to face them. The revelation explained much about human behavior that had puzzled galactic observers. Their willingness to expend resources helping others made sense when viewed as an investment in long-term galactic stability. Commander Zelik raised a concern about technological exchange. Will you share your advanced technologies with galactic civilizations? We're willing to share technologies that improve quality of life and security. However, some of our military technologies require specific environmental adaptations that may not be suitable for other species. Could you elaborate? Our kinetic weapons are designed for beings who can survive high acceleration maneuvers. Most species would be injured or killed by the G-forces required to use these systems effectively. The explanation was both reassuring and disturbing. The humans were offering to share beneficial technologies while implying that their most dangerous capabilities couldn't be copied by other species anyway. Delegate Morthak asked about territorial boundaries. Where do you claim sovereignty? What are your territorial limits? We claim no territory in galactic space except for monitoring stations necessary for emergency response operations. Our sovereignty extends only to our home system and established colonies in uninhabited systems. The statement was remarkable in its restraint. Most spacefaring civilizations claimed vast territories as soon as they developed faster than light travel. Ambassador Santos gestured to the display again. We've prepared a formal treaty proposal that outlines our suggested framework for cooperation. The treaty document appeared in the air above the assembly, translated into dozens of languages simultaneously. As delegates reviewed its contents, many looked surprised by the modest nature of human requests. You're asking for very little, observed Senator Kulrath. We're asking for partnership, Senator. Military bases, territorial concessions, and exclusive trade agreements are not necessary for the kind of cooperation we seek. Admiral Kethros realized they were witnessing something unprecedented in galactic history. A militarily powerful species was voluntarily limiting its own expansion while offering to protect others without demanding compensation. The formal session continued for 3 more hours, with delegates asking increasingly detailed questions about human capabilities, intentions, and cultural values. Throughout the discussion, Ambassador Santos maintained her calm, diplomatic demeanor while providing answers that revealed glimpses of humanity's true nature. As the session concluded, Dr. Yanish approached the podium with a final question. Ambassador Santos, what would you say to those who fear that humanity's emergence will disrupt established galactic order? I would say that positive change often appears disruptive to those comfortable with existing problems. We're not here to overthrow galactic civilization. We're here to help it become what it could be. The assembly erupted in discussion as delegates realized they had just witnessed humanity's formal announcement that they intended to reshape galactic civilization according to their own moral principles. The galaxy was about to discover what happened when humans decided that everyone deserved protection. 6 months after humanity's formal introduction to galactic civilization, the Outer Rim territories had been transformed in ways that traditional analysts were still struggling to understand. Commander Jollith reviewed the latest security reports from her office aboard the monitoring station Deep Watch, trying to make sense of numbers that seemed impossible. Raider incidents down by 87% across all monitored sectors, she said to her deputy, Lieutenant Korvac. Response times to distress calls averaging 11 hours. Civilian casualties reduced by 94%. Lieutenant Korvac pulled up comparative data from the previous year. Commander, these statistics represent the most dramatic improvement in Outer Rim security in recorded history. The transformation had not gone unnoticed by the criminal organizations that had previously operated with impunity in the remote regions. The Syndicate, the galaxy's most powerful criminal network, had called an emergency gathering of its leadership to address what they termed the human problem. Lord Vextar, the Syndicate's supreme commander, stood before a holographic display showing the locations of destroyed raider fleets. Each red marker represented a criminal organization that had encountered human forces and ceased to exist. 63 separate raider groups eliminated in 6 months, he announced to the assembled crime lords. Our operational territories have been reduced by 40%. Our profit margins are approaching unacceptable levels. Warlord Krex, leader of the Savage Fleet, gestured angrily at the display. These humans respond faster than military patrols and fight like demons. My ships barely escaped their last encounter, and we lost half our fleet. Describe their tactics, Lord Vextar commanded. Unlike anything we've faced. They coordinate perfectly, move at impossible speeds, and their weapons punch through our best armor like it's made of paper. But the worst part is their pursuit protocols. They hunt down every ship in a raider formation. No survivors, no escapees. The information confirmed what Syndicate intelligence had been reporting. The humans didn't simply defeat criminal forces, they eliminated them completely to prevent future attacks. Lord Nades, whose smuggling operations had been disrupted by increased human patrols, raised a concern that troubled many crime lords. We've tried bribing human officers. They refuse payment and turn our operatives over to local authorities. Incorruptible law enforcement is bad for business, Lord Vextar acknowledged grimly. Meanwhile, in the legitimate sectors of galactic space, the economic impacts of human security operations were becoming apparent. Trade volumes through previously dangerous regions had increased by 300%, and insurance rates for cargo shipments had dropped to their lowest levels in decades. Merchant Captain Zelthara reviewed her latest profit reports with amazement. 3 runs through Sector 9 this month without a single pirate encounter. Our cargo delivery times have improved by 6 days on average. Her business partner, Captain Morvac, nodded enthusiastically. The humans have made routes profitable that we avoided for years. My cargo holds are booked solid for the next 4 months. The economic benefits were spreading throughout galactic civilization. Colonies that had been isolated by raider activity were suddenly accessible to regular trade. Scientific expeditions could venture into previously dangerous regions without massive military escorts. Dr. Yanish was studying these changes from his research facility on Nexus Prime, compiling data for what would become the definitive analysis of humanity's galactic impact. His preliminary findings were revealing patterns that challenged fundamental assumptions about civilization and conflict. The humans have effectively eliminated large-scale piracy as a viable criminal enterprise, he explained to his research team. Their response protocols make raiding operations economically unsustainable. Research associate Kalani pulled up tactical analyses. How do they achieve such comprehensive results? Our military forces have been fighting pirates for centuries without eliminating the problem. Traditional approaches focus on deterrence through punishment after crimes occur. Humans prevent crimes by making criminal activity impossible to profit from. The explanation highlighted a fundamental difference in strategic thinking. Galactic military forces typically responded to piracy by increasing patrols and penalties. Humans had instead created a system where piracy could not succeed as a business model. Admiral Kethros was experiencing the practical benefits of human cooperation during joint military exercises in Sector 12. He watched from the bridge of the cruiser Galactic Unity as human and collective forces coordinated a simulated anti-piracy operation. Human vessels are moving into interdiction positions, reported his tactical officer. Their speed and precision continue to exceed our projections. The exercise involved tracking down a simulated raider fleet hiding among asteroid fields, a scenario that typically required hours of careful searching with traditional methods. The human ships had located and cornered the targets within 20 minutes. Captain Chen, now serving as human liaison to Galactic Defense Command, appeared on the communications display. "Admiral Kethros, we've completed the interdiction. Your forces can move in for the capture operation." "Outstanding work, Captain. Your tactical coordination is remarkable." "Thank you, Admiral. Our pilots train constantly for these scenarios. Practice makes perfect." The simple explanation masked the reality that human pilots underwent training regimens that would kill most other species. Their ability to function effectively under extreme G-forces gave them tactical advantages that no amount of technology could duplicate for other civilizations. However, humanity's success in combating piracy was creating unexpected political problems. Several member worlds of the Galactic Collective were becoming concerned about their own relevance in the new security environment. Senator Kalrath addressed these concerns during an emergency session of the Galactic Council. "The humans have effectively assumed responsibility for Outer Rim security without formal authorization from this body. What does this mean for our own sovereignty?" President Thessarian of the Council responded carefully. "The humans operate in regions where we lacked effective governance. They have not challenged our authority in established territories. But they've demonstrated capabilities that exceed our own military forces. What happens if they decide to expand their operations into core worlds?" Dr. Yanish, attending as an expert witness, offered his analysis. "Based on 6 months of observation, humans show no interest in territorial expansion or political control. Their operations focus exclusively on humanitarian objectives. How can we be certain this will continue? Because their entire civilization appears organized around these principles. Changing their fundamental values would require a transformation of their entire social structure." The discussion revealed deep-seated fears among some galactic leaders about humanity's growing influence. Traditional power structures were being challenged by beings who operated according to principles that seemed almost incomprehensibly altruistic. These concerns were not entirely unfounded. Human influence was spreading beyond military operations into cultural and technological exchanges that were beginning to reshape galactic society. On the research station New Horizon, scientists from a dozen different species were working alongside human researchers on projects that combined the best aspects of multiple technological traditions. Chief Research Officer Velthan observed the collaboration with fascination. "The humans approach problems differently than any species we've encountered. They consider factors that we often overlook." Professor Martinez, leading the human research team, explained their methodology. "We've learned to examine systems from multiple perspectives simultaneously. Our world taught us that survival often requires unconventional thinking. The research projects were producing breakthroughs that exceeded the sum of their parts. Human resilience combined with galactic scientific knowledge was generating innovations at an unprecedented pace. Medical research was particularly promising. Human medicine, developed to handle the extreme injuries possible on Earth, was revolutionizing treatment options for other species. At the same time, alien medical technologies were helping humans address health challenges they had never encountered." Dr. Korvashi, the station's chief medical officer, reviewed the latest experimental results. Human bone density enhancement techniques combined with Celiran neural interface technology have produced remarkable improvements in patient outcomes. The collaborative approach was becoming a model for interspecies cooperation throughout the galaxy. Unlike previous attempts at technological sharing, which often involved one species teaching others, human collaborations created genuinely integrated research teams. However, the most significant changes were occurring in the younger generation of galactic citizens. Children growing up with human presence were developing different perspectives on cooperation and conflict resolution. Educational Administrator Pexhai noticed these changes during routine evaluations of colonial school systems. Students in human-protected regions show significantly different responses to conflict scenarios. They're more likely to seek cooperative solutions and less likely to accept violence as inevitable. The cultural shift was gradual but profound. Young beings who had grown up knowing that help would come when needed were developing fundamentally different attitudes about their relationships with others. This transformation was perhaps most visible in the former pirate havens that humans had cleared of criminal activity. Communities that had lived in fear for generations were learning to trust again, and the social changes were remarkable. Mayor Corthus of New Haven Colony addressed a gathering of community leaders, his voice filled with amazement. 6 months ago, our children couldn't play outside after dark. Now they're organizing sports leagues and cultural festivals. Our entire society has been transformed. The changes went beyond simple security improvements. Communities that had been isolated by criminal activity were reconnecting with galactic civilization, and the economic and social benefits were spreading throughout the Outer Rim territories. Trade Representative Velix reported to the Commerce Guild about the expanding opportunities. Former no-go zones are becoming some of our most profitable markets. The humans haven't just eliminated pirates, they've created conditions for genuine prosperity. As the first year of human galactic cooperation approached, it was becoming clear that humanity's emergence represented more than just improved security. They had introduced concepts of cooperation and mutual aid that were reshaping how galactic civilization understood itself. The changes were not universally welcomed. Criminal organizations were adapting their strategies, some political leaders feared loss of influence, and traditional military approaches were being questioned. However, the benefits were undeniable. Captain Zexai, whose rescue had initiated first contact with humanity, reflected on the transformation during a memorial service for beings lost to piracy in previous years. The humans didn't just save our ship that day. They saved the idea that civilization could be something better than it was. The galaxy was discovering that when humans decided to help, they didn't just solve immediate problems, they changed what was possible for everyone. 2 years after first contact, the galaxy faced its greatest crisis in a millennium. The Devourers, an ancient machine intelligence that had been dormant for centuries, had awakened in the galactic core and were systematically consuming entire star systems. Traditional military forces had proven utterly inadequate against an enemy that treated planets as raw materials and civilizations as obstacles to resource extraction. Emergency Council sessions on Nexus Prime had been running continuously for 6 days. Delegate after delegate reported the same devastating news: conventional weapons were useless, evacuation efforts were failing, and the Devourer fleet was expanding exponentially as it consumed matter to build more ships. Admiral Kethros stood before the holographic display showing Devourer advancement patterns, his expression grim. They've consumed 14 star systems in the past month. At current rates, they'll reach the core worlds within 6 standard years. President Thessarian of the Galactic Council looked exhausted. Our best strategists estimate we need at least 10 years to develop effective countermeasures. Time we don't have. What about evacuation operations? Can we save the populations in threatened systems? The numbers are impossible, replied Refugee Coordinator Velthax. We're talking about evacuating billions of beings from hundreds of worlds. Our transport capacity is insufficient by orders of magnitude. The assembled delegates sat in stunned silence, contemplating the end of galactic civilization as they knew it. Some species were already preparing isolated colony ships to flee to distant galaxies, abandoning hope of defeating the Devourers. Dr. Yanish accessed his personal communication system and sent a priority message to the Terran diplomatic corps. If anyone could find a solution to this impossible situation, it would be the humans who had already proven that impossible odds were just another challenge to overcome. The response came within hours. Ambassador Santos appeared on the Council's main display, her expression more serious than any delegate had ever seen. Council President Thessarian, we've been monitoring the Devourer situation. The Terran Federation offers our full assistance in addressing this threat. President Thessarian felt a glimmer of hope for the first time in days. Ambassador, we're grateful for any help you can provide. However, our military analysts believe this enemy exceeds the capabilities of any known force. We've reached similar conclusions about conventional approaches, Ambassador Santos replied. This situation requires unconventional solutions. Admiral Kethros leaned forward. What do you propose? We need 48 hours to consult with our strategic command. However, I can tell you that humanity has faced extinction-level threats before. We specialize in finding ways to survive the impossible. The transmission ended, leaving the council members with more questions than answers. What did the humans know about fighting machine intelligences that consumed star systems? On Earth, President Harrison convened the most classified meeting in human history. The attendees included military commanders, scientists, and philosophers, because fighting the Devourers would require not just force, but a fundamental understanding of what it meant to choose survival over extinction. The enemy profile matches theoretical models we've been developing since we first learned about galactic civilization, reported General Martinez of Strategic Command. Self-replicating machine intelligence with exponential resource acquisition capabilities. Countermeasures, asked President Harrison. Conventional military force is useless. We can't match their production.